believe that more than 1 million Canadians can trace their family immigration to Canada back to this one ship. And when the RMS Empress of Ireland sank, it was, and remains to this day, the worst loss of life on a ship in Canadian waters during peacetime. The Empress of Ireland and her sister ship, the Empress of Britain, were built by Fairfield Shipbuilding and Engineering at Govan on the River Clyde in Scotland. Both liners were commissioned by Canadian Pacific Steamships as part of the Canadian Pacific Railway, or CPR. They were to sail the lucrative North Atlantic route between Liverpool and Quebec City. The Empress of Ireland had begun her 96th voyage when she sank. In 1903, well before even the first flight, Canadian Pacific, Canada's national train company, officially entered the market for a transatlantic passenger travel between Great Britain and Canada. In early 1903, they had bought the Beaver Line and her ships, the Lake Champlain, the Lake Erie, and the Lake Manitoba. The Lake Champlain was the first to sail between Liverpool, England, and Montreal, Quebec, in April of 1904. In that first year, there were 33 westbound crossings with a total of 23,400 passengers traveling in third class or steerage. The problem was that the ships of the former Beaver Line were too slow, sailing at speeds of 12 to 13 knots, or 22 to 24 kilometers per hour, or 14 or 15 miles an hour. If Canadian Pacific hoped to own this run, they needed faster, larger ships. The new liners were designed by Francis Elgar and were to be made to the specifications, which would greatly increase the comfort of passengers as well as the speed of the crossings offered, because hull speeds of up to 18 knots or 33 kilometers an hour, 21 miles an hour. Both ships were identical with 2 funnels and 2 main masts. The passenger capacity of just over 1,500. The Empress's safety features included 10 watertight bulkheads, which divided the hull into 11 compartments, which could be sealed off through means of closing 24 watertight doors. All 11 bulkheads extended from the double bottom up to directly beneath the shelter deck, the equivalent of about 3 decks above the waterline. The engineers said the vessel could remain afloat with up to 2 adjacent compartments open to the sea. The watertight doors aboard the Empress of Ireland were required to be closed manually, unlike the Titanic's that could have been closed from the bridge. When she first entered service in 1906, she had been equipped with wood lifeboats, which in 1912 were replaced with 16 steel lifeboats mounted in the traditional radial davits on the deck. Under which, by the way, were stored an additional 26 wooden collapsible lifeboats, all of which combined had a capacity of 1,686 persons. The Empress of Ireland was launched on the 26th of January 1906, and with her original configuration, she required a modest-sized crew of 373 and provided accommodation for 1,542 passengers in 4 separate classes on 7 decks. Her first-class accommodations, located amidship on the upper deck and lower promenade and shelter deck, could accommodate 310 passengers when fully booked. Their accommodations included direct access to the open boat deck and 2 enclosed promenade decks. There was a music room with built-in sofas and a grand piano. a glass dome over the first-class dining room, and there was also a main staircase which was very similar to the Titanic's. The elegant first-class dining room could seat 224 passengers in one sitting. In addition, a separate dining room for up to 30 first-class children was located at the forward end of the deck. Her second-class accommodation, located in the stern on the lower promenade, shelter, and main decks, could accommodate 468 passengers when fully booked. The second-class dining room was large enough to seat 256 passengers at one serving. Sorry, children will have to eat with their family instead of with the nanny. On the starboard side of the upper deck, and in 3 compartments aft of the engine room casing on the main deck, were an array of 2- and 4-berth cabins designed to be interchangeable to both first class and third class. According to the ship's deck plan, cabins for 134 passengers on the upper deck were designed to be converted to first-class cabins if needed. While the cabins for the 234 passengers on the main deck could simultaneously be converted to use for third-class passengers if needed. As for the immigrants and the lower-class travelers, the Empress of Ireland was designed with accommodation reflective of the growing immigrant travel to North America in the turn of the 20th century and before the outbreak of the First World War. Steerage provided accommodation for 764 passengers at the forward end of the vessel. Passengers traveling in steerage had an open space which spanned the full width of the ship and the length of 2 watertight compartments, open berths or beds lining the outer walls, and large children's sandbox enclosed by a wooden fence. At the end of this space were 2 small public rooms, side by side against the adjacent bulkhead. In the early hours of the 29th of May, 1914, the RMS Empress of Ireland sank near the mouth of the St. Lawrence River following a collision in thick fog with the Norwegian coal ship, the SS Storstad. Although the Empress of Ireland was equipped with watertight compartments, and in the aftermath of the Titanic disaster 2 years earlier, carried more than enough lifeboats for all on board, she sank in only 14 minutes. Of the 1,477 people on board, 1,012 died, making it the worst peacetime maritime disaster in Canadian history. For days, searchers recovered bodies from the river, and many of the dead could not be identified and were buried in Rimouski, Quebec. Only 4 of the 138 children aboard the Empress survived, and the remains of hundreds of people were entombed in her wreck. Since the sinking, the Empress has continued to claim lives. The wreck lies about 40 meters or 130 feet below the water, making it accessible for most divers. Over the years, about a half-dozen sports divers have died attempting to visit the wreck site. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. My name is Alan Stokel. If you have a comment, please make them below. And I appreciate the fact that you would register to subscribe. That way I can make more videos to sustain my boat life in my retirement. Thank you.